Hi, everybody. This is Prabhath Gautam back with Hungerless in Seattle with my co-host Jamin Shively, also known as Darth Vegan. And we have a wonderful guest today, Seth Tibbott, the founder of Tofurky. Before we go to Seth, which we'll introduce Seth in a second, Jamin, Darth, as you're known, please tell everybody about what you just did just recently at the University of Washington with your Lawless in Seattle, Hungerless in Seattle efforts to help educate the community.
Yeah. So what we did, rather, we got up at 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday and went down to the University of Washington and got all set up with a giant 11-foot wide banner. I'll just show a quick image of it. And we, for like 12 hours, engaged with the community. I was mostly singing during that time. So here's what the 11 foot wide, 4 feet tall uh, banner, which we had to build quite a sophisticated structure to support, uh, up 8 foot in the air. Lawless in Seattle. And what is lawless in Seattle? We maintain that we are lawless in Seattle and that we lack the most basic essential laws vital to the protection of people and of Mother Earth as a whole. And we believe that law number one that is missing, uh, that should be the most important law, is that everyone gets to eat 3 healthy meals a day uh, of plant-based food. Literally as simple as that, with the intention of inspiring the entire city, the entire state, and the whole world to go plant-based. And so, with Hungerless in Seattle, which is the name of the overall the mission, the dream, the vision of converting the world to eating entirely plant-based and ending hunger in one fell swoop with one single program started in Seattle called Hungerless in Seattle. It's basically feed everyone for free, like Prabhat and I have done in Los Angeles with food healers with Dr. Silas Rao, and it's been implemented in other states. But here we're talking about just literally creating the world's first hunger-free zone, and letting that be the starting point for for many other dominoes to fall of solutions for other basic human needs, whether shelter, housing, healthcare, transportation, etc. And so basic human needs, but then also other basic planetary needs, because Hungerless in Seattle, of course, by getting the world to go vegan, inspiring and leading the world in going vegan, um, will help to eliminate animal agriculture and commercial fishing, the two main forces of decimation of our planet. The third being overheating. Of course, it's all intertwined. The decimation of the planet through animal agriculture has been the main driver of planetary overheating of greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's all interconnected. So uh, the planet also needs to cool, urgently needs to stop the exponential overheating and actually reverse it, or cool the planet. So there's all these different solutions that we see as, you know, dominoes that will tumble after we've accomplished Hungerless in Seattle, right? And so the program is basically shock and awe with Lawless in Seattle. We also have a big sign that says criminal drug cartels out of the state of Washington.
Which is an initiative you worked on to
Right.
help get cartels out, right?
Exactly. I was one of the leaders of legalization of cannabis back in the day and saw how that actually pulled in criminal activity. But that's a long story. Anyway, so taking responsibility for that, I started a mission to eradicate all criminal drug cartels, or um, from the state of Washington, remove them, not necessarily eradicate them, but remove them from the state of Washington through entirely peaceful means. So the combination of those two messages really creates quite a jolt, a shock to the system, which we believe is very much needed.
Yeah. So with that, Jamin, when we had first talked about putting this podcast together, Hungerless in Seattle, we talked about who are the experts in the world of plant-based food and also just experts in creating social change. And the first people I thought of was my friend Seth Tibbott, who started Tofurky. And happily, we get Seth here today. So we definitely want to learn some of your story, Seth, but also, creating something new and big in a time when people think it's a crazy idea, like which is what Jamin is doing with the idea of providing all meals for people in a day and having a society where people aren't hungry. A lot of people are like that's such a crazy initiative. It's so unlikely. For you, when you were so early on in your journey, kind of walk me through when you started the Tofurky and what other people told you about the chance of it succeeding.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Prophet. Yeah, I started making tempeh commercially in 1980, and I had learned to make tempeh at the farm in Tennessee, which was a very inspiring place. It was 1,200 hippies living on 1,600 acres of land, growing soybeans and being self-sustaining. I mean, they were you see these bumper stickers like to go lightly on the earth so that everybody can live. I mean, these guys were living it. They were living, they'd have these tents, that were about the size of a normal kitchen living room in a U.S. house, and they would have like 20 people living in there. And they were eating soybeans and tortillas almost exclusively. Every time I went there, that was the meal we had, just like pressure cooked soybeans and tortillas. They had this cookbook that's great, the farm cookbook, and I still have it, but it had exotic things like salsa on, your tortillas, but they didn't have that. They were really trying to do good, and they had an organization called Plenty, and they still do, which was going out in the world and addressing hunger. And, that was one of their main missions, was, hey, we're going to save the world by veganism. And they didn't even call it, by the way, veganism back then, because it was, this is like 1975 when I went there. And they were said, we're pure vegetarians. There was lacto vegetarians and pure vegetarians. So the farm was trying to, just take care of themselves without any kind of assistance to the government or whatever, and then feed people in the world. They had these soy dairies like in Guatemala and Bangladesh and all over the world. So I was really taken and inspired by that. And with that, I had been working as a teacher naturalist for 8 years out of college. And then when I went to the farm, they were saying, like, it's really a holy thing to take care of yourself and a few others. And so that's what I wanted to do, because when I was a naturalist, I was dependent on the government for a living. And I wanted to support myself, especially when Ronald Reagan came in and he took away all of the environmental sort of programs that I had been surviving on. So that was a big inspiration for me for starting tempeh, and that's where I learned to make tempeh. Is I got the tempeh starter from the farm, took it to my little tent. I was working in Tennessee at the time in the summer, teaching high school kids about environmental ed, and I put a batch of cooked and split soybeans that were inoculated with this magic starter out in a field because in Indonesia, it's like 80 degrees to 88 degrees every day. And that's the perfect temperature for making tempeh. So I made this tempeh in July and I put it out in a pan in a field on a chair, and I came back and I lifted up the cover, and there was 24 hours later this beautiful bed of mold, white mold, tempeh mold. And I was like, I had seen pictures of tempeh, I'd never eaten it, but I was like, yeah, this looks good to me. But the people on the staff I took the tempeh into, and to be fair, they had been drinking beer, so they were more open to different things. But talking to them now, they thought, well, I might die, but at least I'll die happy, these are moldy soybeans. But we cooked them up and we all were blown away how good they were.
Mm.
And so, as part of the credo of the farm was, to live simply so others can simply eat. And that really struck home to me. And I took that mission. That was my mission, starting well, it was called Turtle Island Soy Dairy back then, and that was in Forest Grove, Oregon, which was a small town outside of Portland. And so I started making tempeh in the Hope Co-op kitchen at night, which was I'd go in there at 4 o'clock and I'd get my kettles out and I'd cook the beans and split the beans and put them in this refrigerator that I found under a bridge and cleaned up and made a tempeh fermentation thing. I invested $2,500 and started making like 100 pounds of tempeh a night in 1981.
And who were you able to sell that to? Was it individuals? Was it local businesses? Kind
Yeah, I
of-
had a small little route of about 8 natural food stores and restaurants in the Portland area. And I'd go in there. My delivery vehicle was a three-door Datsun station wagon. And I didn't have much money, so I was looking for a, station wagon or that could be a delivery vehicle because I didn't have a car, and it said some body damage. And those were the words I was looking for because, I didn't care what it looked like, but it had to have a good engine. And so I went out there and I saw this some body damage, and sub body damage turned out to be the whole driver's side of the car was smashed in from being hit by something big and moving fast. And
Wow.
so but I turned the key and the engine started up, and the driver's side door was sitting in the back seat and it was completely ripped off. And so I bought the car, I gave the man the money and drove off and kind of did a little body work with a sledgehammer and banged out the side. And that was my delivery vehicle to about these 8 stores in 1981.
Everybody's probably scared of you on the street because they thought you damaged it. So they're like, well, stay away from him because he's already hit by
Yeah.
a truck and he keeps going.
But
It's
to be fair,
symbolic.
my accounts weren't that, I was kind of nervous and I'd park around the corner so they wouldn't see what I was driving. But they themselves were, early Portland co-ops, and they were warped wooden floors and trash cans full of brown rice. And, they weren't like this, what we think of as Whole Foods or something today. They were not fancy. So, uh, but I did that for, several years. And one of the things that I noticed in one of the store's natures, when I was delivering my tempeh, I would get lunch there and I'd buy this sandwich that King Harvest made, and it was called a Tofurky sandwich. And it was tofu on bread with that had been, baked tofu with a little mayo. It was turkey-esque, but you had to have a good imagination to understand that. And so I ate these tofurkey sandwiches, and I always remembered that.
Wow. And with all of that journey, I mean, did you see a vegan market? Did you see, now they're saying plant-based, right? That's the term that everyone goes by. But did you think that that's viable, or you thought it'd be this niche thing that, it'll
Oh,
be enough for you to make a living, but it
yeah.
probably won't
I
grow?
thought I had small dreams then. I thought if I could get $1,000 a month that I could make it, that was my goal. But I didn't know if it was possible or not. And I actually went out after 2 weeks in business. I went to my Aunt Rosie in Minnesota for Christmas, and I was so excited about my business. And I sat down after meal one night and I said, Rosie, Rosie, Aunt Rosie, I'm going to be making tempeh. It's moldy soybeans, and I'm gonna support myself and I'm gonna save the world and everybody. And she just goes, stop, stop. Seth, this is a really bad idea. This is a meat eating country, and it's always going to be a meat eating country. And nobody wants to eat soybeans, especially not moldy ones. And so I was like, oh, I'm not going to let you bring me down, Rosie, but I have a different idea. And
Yeah.
so I went back and started making the kitchen. But there was other people that thought it was a pretty weird idea.
Yeah. And it's caught on, right? Like,
Yeah, it was like I was like from the roots of esotericism, flowers banality, and this is going to be an everyday thing someday. You just watch. So I want to get in on the ground floor because, one thing that was a guide for me was when I was at the farm. I was driving back to Oregon, and I noticed that there was a lot of granola on the shelves then. And I was like thinking back to my college days 5 years earlier. And I was like, you know what? I remember the only place that you could buy granola in Springfield, Ohio in 1975 or 72 was in the head shop that I worked in. It was right there below the pipes and the papers,
yeah.
and there was bags of granola, and people would come in and they'd go, I want some zigzags and give me a pipe, and I'll take a bag of granola too. I'm going to be hungry later. And it was in these rainbow colored bags and everything. It was really hippie, tie-dye kind of market. And but then, I'm going through Ohio, and there in the grocery store was this whole aisle full of granola. And I was like, the hippies were right about granola. They're going to be right about tempeh too.
Hmm.
So that was my guide was granola.
Wow. And how many years were you the owner of Tofurky? And then what year was it sold?
2022 was it sold, so it was 42 years
Wow.
in Tofurky, but it was really 15 years before Tofurky was brought out on the market, and those first 9 years, I took home $31,000 in salary, which was like 300 a month, and I lived 7 of those years were was living in a tree in a tree house that I had built. I was renting 4 trees for $25 a month. That's $6.25 a tree.
Wow. So
And so
it
I
was
was keeping my overhead low,
30,000
or
cumulative
maybe
in
my
those times.
overhead was high. I don't know. I'm living in a tree, I was up
Right.
there with the squirrels.
Yeah.
But that's one of the, things about bootstrapping and starting a business. You want to keep your overhead low, right?
Yeah.
Throughout that time, how many times did you think to just quit? Like it's not going to work. It's too much effort. Some partner said, "This is crazy. I don't want to live in a treehouse with you." Like, were there a lot of times you were thinking,
Actually, not too many. And I was just blown away to be in business, and I was seeing the business slowly grow. But there was one time, like after about 9 years of living on nuts and berries and not really, just being able to pay just minimum wage to a couple of people, like part-time. I didn't have money to pay benefits or good wages and all of that. So I was like, you know what? I'm really a failure at this business thing, and I think I should pivot and become something else. So I was like, what else can I do out here? I was living, at that point up in Washington State, in Houston, Washington, this town of about 50 people. And it was in the Cascades and really remote in a very poor county. And I was making tempeh in a school that I had, as an abandoned schoolhouse that the local school district rented to me for $150 a month. And it was 13,000 square feet with a gym and a commercial kitchen
Wow.
and 4 classrooms. But I was still struggling as a business and thought I was a failure. So I started to write a book about tree houses, thinking like, because I had all these people that were writing me about the tree house, because I had written some articles for Whole Foods Review, Whole Earth Review, and places like that. So I had these, but I failed at that. I was good at failing, apparently.
hmm,
So when that dream perished, I went back to the tempeh mines and kept making tempeh. I moved the company over to Hood River, which is a more prosperous town. And it's right on the freeway, as opposed to being, very rural and the school. And bam, 10 minutes later, there's Tofurky and changed my life, and changed everybody. Everybody thought that's a bad name and it's too funny and you should be serious. And I'm like, dude, I've been trying to be serious like as a businessman, and where's it gotten me? It's like gotten me nowhere. And I was like, I like, laughing and having fun. And so just trying to eject more of me into that business. And, I thought Tofurky was comical and fun. And sure enough, the comics and late night comedians, had a field day with talking about Tofurky, and it really caught hands and they were laughing. So they were grateful to me. I never got a check from them. I should have,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it was like, but the, consumer wasn't laughing, or they were laughing, but they were also enjoying, they were like sending me letters and postcards like, I've been waiting 20 years for this product. I'm not a second class citizen at Thanksgiving anymore. It's like, I drove 2.5 hours to get my Tofurky, and I was like, "Gosh, looks like we're maybe onto something." Tempeh never turned out like this. None of my other products, my well-behaved tempeh products, and then there was this rowdy, wild Tofurky child.
Yeah. Well, the thing that put you on the map for me was people would talk about going to a Thanksgiving, lunch, a lunch dinner, or that whole long day that people have, and that there would be a tofurkey. And I said, "What's a tofurkey?" And I said, "It's like a turkey, but it's a tofu turkey." And I said, "What? What is this?" Because as an Indian from parents from India, we did not ever have turkey at the Thanksgiving table. We didn't do Thanksgiving. We just knew it's a day to be at home and watch TV and enjoy. But for a lot of American people I grew up with, they said that they were either vegetarian, vegan. They said it was really difficult for them, and some of them couldn't see their family that day because they said seeing a bird sitting on the table is just too traumatizing for them. So you mean
Oh, yeah.
I think you saved families way more than you probably realize.
Yeah, it was a peacemaking product. I like to think of it because, people could now go to the family and they just bring a tofurkey, they throw it in the oven, and voila, there'd be something they could put in the center of the table. So, we knew that it was a deep sort of undiscovered niche, everything a marketer always dreams about, finding this undiscovered niche and then filling it. But we were still like just getting started, and it was improving sales, and we actually were starting to make a little profit and everything, and as the years rode, the first couple Tofurky seasons. But I remember the moment where I felt like, okay, we're not bootstrapping anymore. We're like a small business. It was in 2001, and I was sitting in my office after a successful but tiring Tofurky season, and it was like 7 o'clock, and I was ready to go home, and the phone rang, and I was like, "Am I going to answer this phone?" And I was like, I guess I will." And I answer the phone, and I pick it up, and this voice on the other end goes, "Seth, Seth," and I go, "Aunt Rosie, is that you?" And she was like, "Seth, Seth, you were on Jeopardy. You were a question on Jeopardy." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Yeah, I watch it every night, And she was like living in an assisted living home at that point. She had
Oh.
lost her husband. She had lost her eldest son in this terrible boating accident. But she still had this redheaded, fiery personality. And she was like, "I knew it was a good idea. That was so good. You're so brilliant." You know. And I
So we'll
was
say she
like,
was such an early adopter, she doesn't even realize it.
yeah, I was like, "Well,
Wow. Well,
thanks,
that's
Rosie."
got to be, an amazing feeling, though, that your first loud naysayer, right?
Oh, yeah.
That large voice in your head or in front of your face that told you it's never going to work.
Oh, it
on
was
you
great,
on Jeopardy, and it
you
worked.
know, and it was sort of that moment where I felt like, we've turned a tide here because my Midwestern Aunt Rosie, dear Aunt Rosie, bless her, was kind enough to call and be excited for her, nephew. And, it was just like, okay, now we're a small business. We're not bootstrapping anymore. We got to Aunt Rosie.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I wanted you and Jamin on this episode together is that, well, one, Jamin's the co-host, so I can't get rid of him if I try. But the other thing is, you've been so generous throughout the years I've known you, where you've donated Tofurky to different events, to different charity things. Uh, and I know you've always thought, hey, it's a wonderful way to help feed people, help people. So talk to me a little bit about, some of the work you've done with Tofurky and also just helping with food, both domestically and internationally.
Yeah, like, well, as far as Tofurky goes, yeah, we did support a lot of events, and we have a soft spot for nonprofits and animal sanctuaries and places like that because we feel like they're transformative places, and that nonprofits, we looked at them as the unpaid marketing arm of Tofurky. I mean, I would go to, like, I remember one time I was in New York City on some business and I was just walking through Washington Square Park and Greenwich Village, and there was like this woman out there giving Tofurky deli slice samples out, and I had no idea that, she was going to be there, and it was just like a great feeling. But so supporting nonprofits was part of our credo and mission. And one of the things we did every year, and we're still doing today, and it's growing more and more, is we have this Tofurky trot that is every Thanksgiving morning. Um, it's a 5K race, and all of the money goes to, it's a split between this Northwest Veg vegan group and seven animal sanctuaries in the local area. And last year, we raised over $30,000 for these groups in one day. And we had 1,300 runners, and we're on track to have 15 to 1,600 runners today. There's the biggest turkey trot in Portland is one that gives money to the freaking zoo.
Oh,
And we're
wow.
like, my goal is to take over that. And they get, I think, 2,000 or 2,500 runners. And so we are, you know, wanting to, we're about halfway there, or a little bit more than halfway there to taking over as the biggest Thanksgiving race. And so this year we're right down the street from the ICE headquarters in Portland. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe I'll get a frog suit. I don't know.
Oh,
Uh, but I really feel like these farm animal sanctuaries do a lot of good in terms of changing people's attitudes about animals, and that's how I became permanently vegan. I mean, all those years in Tofurky, I was when I first started tempeh, and I was like, I had been vegan back and forth, and I was still kind of back and forth vegan, or uh, I don't know what, flexo vegan, something. But then, I gave a talk at the Farm Sanctuary in Watkins Glen, New York in 2011. And, I laid down there in the pig pen, and these beautiful pigs were sitting there, and I was petting them. And I was like, holy cow, how can anybody take this, beautiful sentient being and destroy it, and destroy, millions of them? And it just hit home. And, that was my vegan moment. And I've been 100% vegan since then. But, wish I had figured it out sooner. But, the main thing is figuring it out. When's the best time to become vegan was like when you were born. When's the second best time to become vegan? Today. So, it's like it was just a moment. But since retiring, I've been having the luxury of going more full time into this nonprofit sector and supporting nonprofit projects. Some of the my favorites that I've worked at, that are food related, was the Lviv Vegan Kitchen in Ukraine, which was two sisters, Marta and Oksana, and the day that the invasion in 2022 happened, they lived in Lviv, which is on the border of Poland. And so a lot of the people that were evacuating from Kiev were on trains, and they'd stop at the train station. And it was just a hellscape, of like there was no food or anything for people. And they started going down there with tea and power bars, to just give to people. And then they saw that there was a need. And I don't know how they did it, but 3 days later, they opened this kitchen to feed refugees that were passing through town and that were in need. And they did that for like 3 years, and I was supporting them. I brought them over here to LA. I don't know if you met them at the AVA,
I
but
did, yeah. I get to meet them.
AVA, and they raised money, and they're still um, doing stuff. They're sending now vegan packages out to people on the front lines, like because they're in the west of the country, which is safer, but it's still getting bombed every now and then, and they've had bombs land like a couple 100 meters from their apartment that shook all the windows and everything and broke stuff. But so they're also feeding vegan soldiers, because there's all these vegan soldiers that are out there, and the Ukraine army doesn't give them special rations, so they're having to make do. So they have this big project now where they're feeding vegan soldiers care packages.
That's
So that was one thing. And then, another thing that I've been doing is in Uganda. I met this guy, Dash, of the Podstruka Foundation, and he's been feeding, um, school kids free vegan meals in Africa, as well as doing activism work and advocacy. But so we have been supporting that because, I mean, it's hard over here to be hungry, and there is hunger in this country, but there's next level hunger in some of these places like Uganda. Like one of the kids at one of the schools um, that he was feeding these free vegan meals to at lunch every school day, and that was like the only meal or the best meal that a lot of these kids were getting. And this kid caught malaria, and he went home, and he had to drop out of school, and there just wasn't food for him at home, and he died, from malnutrition and having this terrible disease. So it's like, life and death kind of important over there. So I've been feeding like I think it's 600 kids a day through Dash. And now we're looking into the idea of putting in a little tofu plant in Kampala, which is the capital of Uganda, so that we could get some protein to these kids. But, it's no small task starting a food business in any country. And it's, like it's hard in this country, and there's all kinds of everything, equipment wise and stuff. But doing it in a poorer country is something that, I'm really having to try and imagine and look out. So yeah, it's but it I'd love to see it happen. And he's real charged up on the idea, and he wants to make seitan too, and these soy chunks, yogurt. He has big dreams, but he doesn't know anything about food. But you know what? Neither did I.
Right.
Manufacturing when I started, so I'm kind of drawn to that. But at the same time, I'm trying to be, I don't have endless pots of money, so it's got to be really well thought out and designed. But it's amazing how Africa is like that too. Like, uh, it's pretty much very common that governments throughout Africa do not have school lunch programs, and so
Right.
it's just crazy when you think of it. So here to get these at-risk school kids fed, it depends on charity and these nonprofits doing the work. And, it's just really and, the Western world seems to be like okay with it, I mean, it isn't like we gotta, I don't hear anybody or any politician talking like we've gotta, support these kids. 3 out of 10 kids in Uganda are stunted because of lack of proper nutrition, like by stunted, I mean don't grow to their intellectual or physical potential, and this is a real problem in the world. And, it just blows me away that these conditions are allowed to exist in a world of, epic ability to um, feed people and money that, is in the hands of billionaires who, really could do something, but don't. And so anyways, just trying to be a good world citizen to that. But it's, and it's interesting in the nonprofit world. I don't know if you've seen this, Prabhat, but I have, there's a thing about feeding, this effective altruism program about feeding people is like they don't want to give money to feeding people. They will give money for advocacy, but they won't give money feeding people. And we need both. I get it. Like advocacy
Wow.
is important because, in the long run, you're trying to create more vegans. And but at the same time, it seems tone deaf to me to be giving money to Uganda, like Dash, he's gotten money from people and they say, okay, I'll give you 5,000 or $10,000, but this is only for advocacy. And in the meantime, there's all these starving,
Right.
stunted, malnourished kids. And it just seems, yeah,
Illogical, right?
tone deaf that
Yeah.
there can't be some like, here's half for this or or this more attention. So it's a messed up situation.
Yeah, no, you and I one day will do a, panel or something with the effective altruism people. A lot of them were highly critical of animal sanctuaries because they didn't
Yeah,
feel like it
it's
was the
another
best
one.
bang for your buck. And I said, it's not supposed to be a moneymaker. Like it's if you have empathy in you and you see the first time I ever, pet a cow, chicken, pig, turkey was the sanctuary. The only other experience I had with them, they were on my plate before that, right? So it's like it turns what you thought of as food into actual living beings. And what that does to a person psychologically, it changes you forever. And I mean, my critique of the effective altruism movement's always been their poster child was Sam Bankman-Fried, and now he's in federal prison. So I feel like enough said at that, like I think they're missing a lot of the empathy component, and they miss how the majority of people they want to be emotionally connected to whoever they're helping. And,
Yeah,
and it's not a statistical model in an Excel spreadsheet. If
right.
somebody's hungry in front of you, you feed them. And if you have to go to a restaurant and feed them a meal, that's 8 times the amount it would be if you bought it at a grocery store or wholesale. You feed them because they're hungry in front of you. And I think that's where you and I are very similar, where you see a
Yeah.
need, you fix it, and then you figure out long-term solution after. But in that moment,
Yeah.
just fix it.
Well, it's really admirable. I love hearing about what you two have done and, working for towards hunger-free zone of Seattle. And, I know there's people up there that are hurting and in need. And, especially now, given the political, nature of feeding people in need, it's just like, very criminal, really. And I think, hopefully we're turning a corner now after last night's results, but there's so much damage that's been done, and just uh, not only are there people that need assistance, but I mean people that are working. There's the working poor, and trying to just feed their families on the meager income, and the price of food is skyrocketing, and you know people are learning the hard way about government BS and political BS about, yeah, we're going to bring down grocery prices on day one, and people are like, yeah, I want to vote for that guy. And
And it's gone up, right?
yeah,
And it's so,
right.
what would you advise Jamin as far as, community partnerships and food companies that will help? Because when he first presented the idea to me about, what if Seattle is a place where, there's plant-based meals, people will get 3 meals a day. And I thought, what a great idea, because if this can happen, it becomes it's the poster child for how to do this in every other city. And obviously there's going to be some differences city to city, but the basic structure gets figured out. But what would you advise them as far as working with other groups and
If
working with?
if you don't mind my interjecting, Prabhat, if you'll allow me to, I just want to share a little bit deeper about exactly what our kind of our vision and mission is, so you get a
Yeah, yeah.
little bit more full
Uh,
picture. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I really love what you said about, the name Tofurky. People say, no, you should be serious and all that. And you said, hey, I've tried this serious route. Let's
yeah.
try this, and look at how successful it was. And I congratulate you and thank you, because you're doing such good things with your success. So so likewise, we are anything but serious. So let me in certain ways, and of course we're stone cold serious in others. But so here's our setup yesterday. You can see one of our highly motivated employees there off on the right. And so we had two signs. This is a sign that I've been using ever since I realized that what I had done had actually inadvertently invited in uh, criminal drug cartel activity in the legalized, quote unquote, legalized cannabis market. Um, After having invited up President Vicente Fox to join me, and we did a big press conference that actually forced the hand of the Obama administration to legalize. So now, if you consider the combination, first of all, so you see Lawless in Seattle, Jane Goodall and Darth Vegan. I dress up in my full Darth Vader costume.
Nice, nice.
And I sing Spanish love songs with amplification, English love songs. I adapt the songs sometimes just on the fly with plant-based messages and messages of ending hunger. But let's say you didn't know any of that. You're just riding by on your bicycle, and you literally see this. This banner is the 11-foot wide one, which required a sophisticated wood structure,
I want
so
to see that.
wouldn't have to drive stakes into the ground or anything like that.
Yeah.
But and then this was one I've had for years. But yesterday was the debut of Lawless in Seattle. So let's say you never met me or Prabhat. You're just bicycling by and you see all this, and like what comes to mind?
Well, it's a great attention getter, and what I like about it is that it has uh, both, you got the Darth Vader in there as an element of humor, and then you have Jane Goodall, who is an element of just righteous, mission-driven person, and like I think that humor is too often not used in vegan products and the natural products in general. But as a marketing tool, because people like humor, and it's like a basic human emotion, to want to share with people, and it engages you with people. It's a very engaging sign, I think, with the I love the Darth Vader and Lawless in Seattle makes you want to stop and, ask questions. So I would think you'd get some good engagement out of it.
Good, good. Thank you. And then you see the criminal drug cartels out of the state of Washington sign, and which is a bit more serious, shall we say.
Hmm.
Not a ton of humor in that necessarily. Very good artwork.
Hmm.
I credit my graphic designer Dylan Rawlings, and but again, very quite serious. So the combination of those two, whereas the Lawless in Seattle on its own might just be, oh, that's funny and engaging. Let me learn more about that. But then thank you, Melissa, sweetheart. I want to credit Melissa for the Jane Goodall image in this coming up with that concept. We co-create everything here. So uh, my intention here is really partly shock and awe, because I believe I'm a student of marketing, and that took me to become a corporate strategy manager at Microsoft when I really studied engineering in college and grad school. But through marketing, I've learned that there's only one way to get into the human mind, and that is to blast your way into the
Hmm.
mind. And
Yeah.
you blast your way in with Tofurky, because one question is, wait a second, is this a turkey product? Because it sounds like turkey, right? So they're jolted by that. And then they're jolted by the idea that you shouldn't eat turkey. And because starting when you did, you were just so far ahead of the curve. So here we blast into the mind with the idea of, lawlessness and criminality and violence and all these things. And yet there's also humor, because I'm singing all day long, literally all day long,
Wow.
with amplification. I love to sing. I love to sing, and that really draws people in. I'm pretty good at singing, nowhere near professional or anything, but I've got incredible stamina. Like we were there, we literally got up at 3 in the morning yesterday, and it took a while to get all set up and everything, and suited up, and there's a million details, but then we get rolling and we just go all day long. So we're going to go again this Friday. So the idea is blast into the mind. And when people finally, get curious enough to ask, what is this lawless in Seattle, right? And then we explain that in our present normalized, what we've normalized. We've literally normalized hunger in Uganda, hunger in the ghettos of Seattle. We've normalized so much violence in our world that it's absolutely barbaric. And so what we're doing is we're blasting through with a whole new concept of lawfulness. So if you want to make a transition from lawless to lawful, law number one that's missing is everyone gets to eat 3 healthy meals a day in Seattle and in Uganda and everywhere around the world. But we'd be pretty hypocritical if we didn't start right here at home. So let's create Hungerless in Seattle as
Yeah.
the main antidote to lawless in Seattle. And then other laws will include Seattle Cool for cooling the planet. We at the University of Washington has possibly the best technology in the world for cooling the planet through marine cloud brightening. That's a whole other topic. Where all this builds out towards is compassionate Seattle, creating the world's first certified compassionate city. And what does it actually mean to have a certified compassionate city? What does that mean? Right. Well, for
Hmm.
one thing, everyone gets to eat. Well, what about the other basic human needs? That guy's trying to sleep under a tree and he's getting wet and he's getting pneumonia. How about that? Well, okay. So, but see, that's why I say that Hungerless in Seattle is but the first domino for multiple other dominoes within Seattle. Now, imagine, Seth, once we have achieved a state of hungerlessness in Seattle, can you imagine what will happen to the public health statistics, crime statistics, right? Psychological problems and myriad other problems that are associated with houselessness. I'm not saying ending hunger is going to solve all those problems, but the moving of the dial in terms of statistics, I think is going to be so impressive. It'll become a no-brainer for every American city. And if it's a no-brainer for every American city, why isn't it a no-brainer for the world? And if you look at what it could cost, right? As a student of engineering, I focus a lot on process and efficiency, and so I have this dream of a giant food factory, right, with all these different stations where there's or portions of the factory centers really where they're preparing different types of food. Beans have a whole different process than, fresh kale, for example, right? As you well know. So, but in the end, mass producing cold stew, obviously the stuff that needs to get cooked gets cooked, but then immediately gets refrigerated. So everything's cold, and then we ship it cold to all different points. And there's two different formats. One is bring your own container and we'll fill you up with the cold stew and take it home and cook it there. The other is eat right here in a community cafe kind of setting. And in fact, yeah, there you can see our first community cafe way back in 2015. That was a predecessor to food healers, but all with the basic concept of just free food for everyone. Food is a basic human right. Normalize that. If we can normalize that in Seattle and see all of these statistics utterly transformed, right? It'll start multiple, like a V for Vendettas format of dominoes, going in multiple dimensions. Number one, ending hunger. Number two, going plant-based, because what a great way to get the world to go plant-based, but to see the example, the miracle in Seattle, Hungerless in Seattle. Anyway, I've been talking your ear off a bit there, but passing the feather back to you, Seth.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Do you work with food banks and like non-vegan food banks? Are there food, food not bombs or other vegan food banks in Seattle?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there's Food Not Bombs here. And then we spoke to Gwenna Hunter, who started the Vegans of LA Food Bank. But there's not a vegan food bank in Seattle that we know of.
Mostly, we gave a lot of tofurkeys to just regular food banks, and people were, thrilled to have them. And especially at Thanksgiving, I know there was one in Sacramento that kept every year, ordering, like trying to get tofurkeys because they had a, uh, a populace down there that was, expecting them and appreciating them and everything. But, up here, being out in the country, we're not in Portland. We're, I'm an hour and a half from Portland, and then the Tofurky is an hour from Portland, the manufacturing plant. So we give them locally, which is fine, because it's really good protein, and the deli slices, you can just take them anywhere and have some good protein. But where I've been struggling is when war or something breaks up, like in Ukraine. When I saw the war, I was like, I gotta find the vegans and find. I want to be in touch with some vegans and find out how it's impacting them. And so it was a long process finding you know Marta and Oksana, but now in Gaza, I'm really struggling because and I support like World Central Kitchen, which is not a vegan initiative. There was this guy in New York City in Brooklyn that had when COVID broke out and the first responding medical people were just working their ass off, long hours, and weren't getting food. He had this program where he was just feeding, he'd make these box lunches and he'd deliver them all over to hospitals, in New York City during that COVID spike. And, people were like crazy. They get these free vegan meals and they were delicious. He was a great chef. He had the vision of being the world's central kitchen as a vegan, thing. And he never really, it never really got anywhere. But I thought that was a really fundable thing because, you know, when you're short on food or suffering and somebody feeds you and comes in there, that's a teachable moment. That's a moment you never forget. And I think it's, I mean, is it a way to veganize the world? Like, I don't know that there's any studies or anything of it, because it really hasn't been done. But, you look at veganism is not growing now, and it's been stuck at this plateau for a while. So what we're doing, you know, isn't exactly, I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong or, I mean, because it's keeping, vegans vegan, and that's important too. But how do we move forward and, double our numbers? And, so I don't know. I mean, if vegans were, like if you were playing word association games now and you said the word vegan, I mean, vegans are sometimes thought of negatively, but if the word that popped into your head about vegans was kindness and compassion and, a real thing, I mean, people they'd say, I want to be like that guy. So I don't know, but have you seen anything in Gaza that is, feeding people vegan food? Because I haven't.
I haven't either.
But now, here, may I comment on what you just said?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think the answer is right in front of us, and here's what I see. I sometimes tell a boring little 30-second story, so bear with me here. So imagine you've got 100 matches, right? And you want to start a bonfire, and you've got this big pile of, wood that's just damp enough that it's really hard to ignite. Would you A, take those 100 matches and light 1/100th of the perimeter of the pile of wood? Or would you take them all and concentrate them on one corner of the pile of wood to get it to freaking light? Well, the answer is obvious. It's the latter. Okay, end of boring story. Now, let's apply that to getting the world to go vegan. Should we try to get every country and every city all around the world to try to go vegan right now? One, two, three, go. Or would it be more efficient to get Seattle to go vegan virtually overnight? Because what we're talking about here is starting a cultural revolution, a revolution of compassion, of love, unity, and compassion. Those are my three keywords. And it happens to form the acronym LUCK. But I just use compassionate as sort of a encapsulation of all that. Compassionate city, compassionate Seattle. We define what it means, but in action. So imagine that Tofurky, if it's beneficial to them, right? And how could it not be? Imagine this scenario. Tofurky sends up some folks to give away Tofurky samples, wearing the Tofurky t-shirts, maybe even giving away a few if you have a great conversation and make a great video with somebody. So the target market would be students at the University of Washington who are potential change makers, a sleeping giant of potential change makers, I would say. So get them all recruited to Hungerless in Seattle. How? Giving them free Tofurky. Wasn't it nice that you got this free little sandwich? Didn't it just kind of pick you up? Well, imagine everyone gets that 3 times a day, guaranteed. We become the world's first hungerless city and the world's first compassionate city,
Yeah.
right? And we knock over Seattle in
Hmm.
like essentially instantly. Why? Because it's going to be all over the news. Imagine the founder of Tofurky is there
Mm.
talking into the microphone in between, Spanish love songs sung by yours
Mm.
truly, right? And you give a fun little speech, and your people are out there giving away Tofurky. Can you imagine what's going to happen to Tofurky's stock, to not just mind share, but heart share, their share
Hmm.
of heart? There's certain products I love Let people fall in love with Tofurky and let Tofurky become a certified compassionate product. That's another thing I've been pushing is the certified compassionate. I've trademarked Triple C, certified compassionate, really nice artwork and whatnot. And we can talk about that in another moment. But basically, there's a cultural revolution that's been brewing inside me, and I'm about to, and we're just now exploding open, alien style. And what people are literally feeling is something alien. They've never thought of Seattle as lawless. They didn't know criminal drug cartels operate here, right? And who's this guy singing all these beautiful Spanish love songs? And whoa, suddenly Tofurky is there. We've got a corporate sponsor. What happened? Right? Did Darth Vader went corporate? No, it's that Tofurky went compassionate since before your parents were born, and they've been basically building out some really great stuff. And Tofurky wants to be let Tofurky be ingredients in the stew, and it doesn't have to all be donated, of course. I mean, what you give away, goodness, the multiplier of the love, market share, and profitability for Tofurky, I think would be just insane. So
Mm.
anyway, but basically, I'm doing my best to enroll you and the world in this revolution of love, unity, and compassion. Nothing unifies more than people eating together. And that's another thing we can do. It's not just about cranking out food and, serving it up in some concrete, soup kitchen that looks like it came out of the mid 70s Soviet Union, housing program. You know, no, we're going to have community centers that are warm, that are clean, that are happy places, and everyone eating plant-based food. We'd have a meat-free zone. There'd be meatless in Seattle, and and then these become networking centers, places where people can find work, make friends. Join the meditation group that's going to be happening down the hall after dinner, right? All kinds of healthy stuff. And so Seattle will literally overnight become a compassionate city if we can see, where we set up is at the main entrance to the University of Washington campus, right across from Fraternity and Sorority Row. These kids are hungry for meaning. They're hungry for, something really powerful that they can participate in to change the world. Let Tofurky and Lawless in Seattle show them the way, and let's together create Hungerless in Seattle.
Like it. Good vision. You know who you need to talk to is your old boss up there in Microsoft.
Well, a true story. I talked with him. So I was his corporate strategy manager, and he would love to talk about whatever had to do with making money. And I had some pretty cool ideas, and we implemented some and didn't
Yeah.
implement others. But one day I went to him and I said, Bill, I've been working on this idea that we can really efficiently end world hunger. And you know what we could do? We could bring in your buddy Warren Buffett, who's got the whole Burlington Northern Rail network and is brilliant with all kinds of ideas. What do you say? He was not interested.
Really?
Not interested. He didn't even
Just
want to talk about it.
wow.
Not for 1 minute. He would talk with me for whatever period of
You thinking
time.
of Bill Gates?
Bill Gates.
He should have flown him somewhere. He
Yeah,
put him
well,
on the
unfortunately, he
right.
had somebody else figuring out his travel arrangements. But, but,
That's
but, but
but he had no interest in trying to help,
I mean,
feed the
zero,
world.
zero. If I was talking with him about a brilliant marketing
Yeah.
idea or,
Yeah, that's too bad.
no, it's really a shame. And because the thing is, I can thinking back, you can sort of guess why. Sooner or later, it's going to come down to money. Now,
Right.
but here's an interesting thing about money and Hungerless in Seattle. When you go to the community center to have dinner, right? Like when you come up to Seattle, we'll go to dinner together at one of the Hungerless in Seattle community centers. And at the end of dinner, you normally kind of reach for your wallet, but wait a second, no, 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 it's all free. No, there's a donations bin over there. Shoot, we'll probably pull out $100 a piece and put them in the donation slot. No, but there's no pressure for that, right? Now, here's the thing: even houseless people have money in their pocket. It may not be very much, and they may need to spend it very carefully, but they might even put in $1 or $2 or $5 or $10. We're talking about nutritious, delicious gourmet plant-based stew, literally gourmet.
I like that. Delicious. We always our mantra at Tofurky has always been taste is king, value is queen, everything else is marketing. It's got to taste good, number one, or the product won't succeed. It can have all the, nutritional or environmental things going for it, compassion, everything. But, bottom line is the portal to the human heart is the stomach.
Exactly.
The taste buds, I should say. That's the portal. It's like you love your food to be tasty, and that's just a human condition. So
Yeah.
good ideas.
Well, let's implement it. I mean, we're our window, as Jane Goodall said, our window is closing, right? We don't know how long we have. So I say let's do it. We're going to be here Friday. I invite you to come Friday.
Yeah, I've got a bunch going on right now. I'm got this big fundraiser meal that I'm putting together. I've been working on it for about a year. It's based on a recipe for a Thanksgiving dinner from the November 1900 uh, edition of Good Housekeeping magazine, and they had an article in there called a Thanksgiving dinner of herbs, and it was here's how you have a vegetarian Thanksgiving. This is in 1900,
Wow.
and so we're making all of those items, but we're veganizing them, and we're raising money for the American Vegan Society in Philadelphia. So that's my life for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
maybe we'll just maybe pick up some tofurkey,
Yeah.
and if you could maybe send us any suggestions as to what to give out, like little sandwiches or
Yeah.
slices, or
I'll
you know.
do this. Text me or email me an address, and I'll send you some of our new deli slices, which we got a ham and a turkey deli slice, and they're easy to just put on toothpicks, give out samples, or you could make a sandwich and cut them up and everything, and I'll send you some.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Seth. No, that's
thank you,
amazing.
Seth.
And this will be ongoing, obviously, in Seattle. So
Well,
yeah, we'd love for you to be part of it, after later in the year, and
but I mean, think of what a marketing bonanza it could be for Tofurky, because all you have to do is sponsor Seattle, right? The rest of the cities will be placing orders for pallets of
Mhm.
Tofurky product that they'll pay for.
Yeah.
But only the first one's free. First one's free, right? First city is free.
I've heard
Everything
that
else.
somewhere.
Yeah,
But look, we'll work out the
yeah,
details. But the
yeah.
bottom line, what an opportunity, not just for Tofurky, but for Miyoko and for all kinds of businesses.
Daya, all the companies,
In
yeah.
fact,
Gardein.
you're the perfect guy,
Yeah.
Prabhat, to put together like a whole sampling. I mean, I wouldn't mind having 10 people out there with 10
Yeah.
different products and brands and all that, but let Tofurky lead the way, right?
He
And
sold the company. He can't give it
no,
away yet.
but no, no, no,
When
no.
we're
I'll
gonna
get you some
buy
tofurkey. Don't
Tofurky.
worry. I'll get you some
All
tofurkey.
right, we
Okay,
guys.
awesome.
All right.
No,
Well,
this
great
has been
talking to you
so
guys.
wonderful, Seth.
Likewise.
And
I
thanks for having me
appreciate you.
on. And
Yeah,
yeah, I love hearing your ideas. Good talk.
appreciate your journey and everything you've done for Tofurky and everything you're doing for all the organizations in Uganda, Ukraine, and everywhere else. And yeah,
Cool.
look forward to many more times of us chatting and working together. And hopefully either see you in Seattle when I'm here or in Los Angeles.
Yeah. My son lives in Green Lake and Tangletown, so I
Oh, I know
do,
exactly where that is.
do get
Yeah.
up to see him. He lives like a 2-minute walk from Mighty O Vegan Donuts.
I was just about to mention Mighty O. I mean, I know
He
exactly.
used to work there, like right out of college, and now he's a software engineer. So
Oh, cool.
It's amazing. I'll put us all in text thread
Yeah.
and then yeah, if I can't visit your son while I'm still in town, well, Jamin can go meet with him. But thank you again, Seth. We love what you're doing,
all
and
right.
let's and you see this possible. Like you can see this happening.
Yeah, I mean, you've got enthusiasm. That's the main thing. Nothing great has ever happened without enthusiasm and passion, and if you've got that, you got a shot.
inviting to the
Wonderful.
festival Saturday.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we also invite you to the festival on Saturday, November 8th. My partner, Festival of the Elements,
Yeah.
up here on Whidbey Island.
We'll send you all the
Oh,
information,
nice.
but thank you so much. We appreciate your time, our time with you, and we'll talk soon and see you soon, Seth.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Bye now.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Seth. Have a great night.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
See ya.